Hello, it is Friday, and welcome to your daily dose with Truth to Hear. I'm Melanie Keenan, and today's program, of course, is a Cozy Corner with Melanie. It is the time that I love to just speak from the heart, to ask the Holy Spirit to give me something to say to you that will encourage you, that will maybe make you think a little bit. I don't really know what it will do, but I know that if the word goes forth, it will produce what it's meant to produce in your life and in my life. Same word, but different things happen with it depending on what God needs it to do in our lives. So, thank you for joining me today. Thank you for listening to this word, and I pray it does encourage you. I pray it's a good word to wrap up your week, your work week, if this is your Friday. So today's message is simply called A Long Journey. Now, I don't know about you. I have been this week. It's been a long one, right? Can we just be honest with each other? It has been a very, very long week. We are embarking on new ministries, enlarging our territory by the will of God. But it has caused some, anytime God enlarges your territory, there can be attacks and chaos that comes with it. And it takes us to use all of our tools God has given us in this last season, the words that God has given us, the ministry tools, the connections that we have, our friendships, our family, our prayer time. It has just been a time where I've needed to use all of the tools, all of the words, all of the studies, all the church sermons. It's like, oh my goodness, Lord. So I thank him for that, though. And that's what this message is about. Our journeys might seem really long sometimes, and the days might seem like they're more like a week and a day, but God already knows that. Let me tell you, God has every single thing planned out for us. And when we align ourselves with him, when we in the middle of the chaos take the time, say, you know what? I'm unraveling. I'm not thinking straight. I'm not speaking right. I'm going to sit with God. I'm going to go in my car and drive to a quiet place, and I'm going to scream, and I'm going to yell, and I'm going to cry, and I'm going to talk to God, and I'm going to put on some music that reminds me to worship, to praise him. I'm going to sit with him until I hear him. And he renews my mind. He encourages my spirit. I was reading, it was Numbers. And, if you're like me, Numbers is not something, a chapter in the Bible that you read a lot because it's always, just a list of things. But I was reading in Numbers chapter 33, and it was about the times that the Israelites, when they left Egypt, now they were imprisoned in Egypt for many, many generations, and then God delivered them from Egypt, from their captives, from the Pharaoh who enslaved them. And it said that here's the places that they went, and then they pitched their tent, and then they had to pack up and pitch another tent, and pack up and pitch another tent. And they were wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. So 40 years, think about what you were doing the last 40 years. Okay, for me, I think I'm 13 years old. So from the time I'm 13 till now, what was my life doing? Well, it was doing a lot. The Israelites stayed in the wilderness for that long. But something like sparked an interest in me. How many times did they have to move? Because we know that they were like complaining people. The Israelites were not okay. God delivered them from the Egypt. He gave them a person to guide them. He gave them Moses and Aaron, and he worked miracles. He did signs and wonders on their behalf to ensure their freedom. But then they were in the wilderness, and it was like all we hear is that they were just so ungrateful. God even rained food down from the sky called manna. He even healed them when they were sick. He told them how to go, where to go. So why were they murmuring, complaining so much? See, it's one thing to have a life of 40 years where God delivers you from something, whether it be financial burden or sickness or abuse, captivity. And when he delivers you, it's over. You step right over into the land of plenty. But see, the Israelites didn't have that. Now, we're not going to go into why they didn't have it. That's another study. That's a whole study. This is not a study. But I found it so interesting to realize that in 40 years, they had to pitch their tent and then pack up and pitch again 40 times. 40 times. Now, it wasn't like even one a year, but it equates an average of one a year, or maybe it was two in 1 year, or three in a year, or 10 in a year. I don't know. It doesn't say the length of days. But we do know that in 40 years, they pitched 40 tents. They had to get up and move 40 times. Let me ask you this. Would you be murmuring, complaining? I don't move around 40 times in 40 years. I think I've probably moved maybe 10 times in 40 years. But that was difficult to pack up and leave everything, your friends, your family, to pack up and leave your comfort, your home, and then do it again. Now, God is with you the whole time. He's telling us to do it, but it still causes us discomfort. And so the Israelites 40 times in 40 years moved. How does that relate with us? How many times has God ordered our steps in a different direction and it's uncomfortable and it is unsure, like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure about this. And on the way of the changes that God has for our life, when he says, quit that job, do this. When he says, you know what, leave that person alone, they're not healthy for you, go over here. When he says, trust me, when the doctor said you got to go through this, chemo, radiation, your life's going to change, it's going to be a mess for a while. When you're going through divorces, breakups, financial loss, it is so uncomfortable and so scary. And God says, you know what, trust me, it's just part of your journey. But I got an end game for you. But we look at our circumstances and we look at the people around us and we say, okay, if I'm on the right track here, then God, how come I see people around me complaining? How come no one's rejoicing with me? That you tell me to rejoice always, but I'm the only one trying to rejoice. Well, it's okay. Be the rejoicer. But I see people on the same path and they're dying off. Aaron died. 3/4 of the way through, Aaron died. He was 123 years old when he died. Aaron was a brother of Moses, and he was the spokesperson. He's the one who God used to speak because Moses felt inadequate. And so God gave Moses Aaron to speak on his behalf. And so Aaron died at 123 years old. Now, for those of you who think, well, I'm just old, there's nothing left in my life. I've raised my kids, I've retired from my job, or I want to retire from my job, but my life is done, it's over, it's said, and I'm good with it. Well, let me tell you, if Aaron died at 123 years old, he was 80 years old when he left Egypt with the Israelites. So, okay, we don't live to 123 years old on an average here today, but we live an average of 70, 80 years old. So that means 40 years old. There's that number 40. I love the number 40. So if you're 40, 50 years old and you think hey, my life is settled, Let God uproot you. Let him give you the big hurrah of your life, being something for someone else, like Aaron was for Moses. It was his last hurrah, his last assignment on this earth, but it was a grand one. So don't give up on God. Don't give up on God using you because of your age, because you feel like you have nothing to offer. Aaron was not expecting God to say, you be the mouthpiece for your brother, but look what happened. We have to stay vigilant before God, to be ready at all times for him to call on us, no matter what our age. So back to the story. So these Israelites see Aaron died. He didn't even make it to the promised land. Like, how is the leader, the one that God used to bring us through, not making it to the end result? Well, we have to let go of that idea that those who start with us need to finish with us. So there's going to be many people who start a journey with us, and it is God's purpose for them to do so, but they cannot finish it with us because it's not God's purpose for them to do so. And we like to hang on we feel loyal. Well, if we start with them, we have to finish with them. Not necessarily. See, after Aaron died, they continued to pitch up and move on, pitch up and move on. I think it was like maybe 8 or 9 more times, maybe 10. I didn't count that number. But it was about 3/4 of the way. So they had another quarter of the journey left. And so here they are, 40 years, and they've moved 40 times, and they've seen people die and get lost, and there's murmuring and there's complaining, and God says, okay, here we are. It's the end of the journey. Now they didn't know that. They didn't know how much longer they were going to pitch and move and pitch and move. They didn't know how much longer they're going to have to rely on miracles of God raining manna from heaven. And that might be where you are today. That might be where well, hey, I'm there all the time. But it is okay, because you know what? We want to rely on ourselves. We want our food, our provision to be right there, ready for us when we want it. But the fact that God provides daily for their needs, for your needs and for mine, that's just a miracle. It means he's mindful of you. He's mindful of me. I've had people say, don't you want to just be so wealthy you never have to worry about anything? I don't know. Because I love seeing God move on my behalf. I love seeing God provide right then when we need it. When God says, okay, do this, I provide that. I love that relationship with the Lord. So the Israelites get their last pitch. They're in Moab. And the Lord tells Moses, hey, guess what? This is it. Right there, over there, the land of Canaan, that's your promised land. That's the land of milk and honey. You've made it. Your team, your people, they're going to go across, and it's the promised land. You're going to take over, and you're going to inhabit the land. But here's what you have to do. Now, could you imagine the people? Moses tells them, hey, the promised land's right across there, and we just got to hike over. But wait a minute, there's things we have to do. I'd be like, wait a minute. And that's what I'm like sometimes. Are you like this? Really, God? I just walked the desert for 40 years, and there's a to-do list to gain the promise. I thought this was something you were going to give to us. I thought this was going to come easy. Let me tell you, nothing comes easy when it's worth it. It's just, how we learn to appreciate it. We fight for what is ours. We war over it in the spiritual realm. We work hard with blood, sweat, and tears sometimes, because when we receive the goodness of the Lord, we appreciate it. We understand what he gave us, because it wasn't easy to get it. And we are thankful for it. And we work to keep it. We take care of it. We nurture it. We grow it. We water it. We resow seeds into it. We harvest it. We work that land, whatever it is that God gives you. So the thing that they had to do was get rid of all the false idols in that inhabitants, get rid of all the high and unholy things that were in it, and they had to just get rid of everybody. And God said, "Yes, what if you don't clear out the inhabitants? Well, the ones that you let stay, they're going to be like a thorn in your side, and what I want to do to them, I'm going to do to you." We can't bring things that are not of God into our promised land. We can't hold on to the things that grieve God when we go into our new season. Whatever is there in our life, whatever is surrounding us, whatever we partake in, whatever we do, even in our downtime, it can't go in with us if it offends God. Because God's going to see that. He can't look on unholy things. And it will hurt the promise that God gave us. It will hinder it. Now, the thing is, they sent spies. Hey, let's just go and canvass the area. God told them to. And they sent 12. Out of 12, 10 people came back and said, not doable. These guys are big. They're massive people. They're giants. They're tall. They're strong. They're not going to give us their land. But 2 people, Caleb and Joshua, they saw the land and understood what God was saying. That God was going to give them this land that was full of nurturing food and crops, and it was full of everything they needed. God was going to give them that. So what it belonged to other people? It was now being transferred to them. Let me tell you, don't let anybody scare you away from what God tells you. Don't do it. If God tells you to do something and it seems like an impossible mountain, an impossible feat, do it anyway. You want to know why? Because just like the Israelites, God has shown us in our life in the 40 years journey that He's been there for us, that He will do miracles on our behalf. He has shown us that He wants a relationship with us. He has shown us that we can trust Him. So maybe we've never encountered something so unnerving, something that will take this much faith to make it through or to produce it. And it takes a lot of faith. God, I'm trusting that this is your will because only you can bring this to pass. But isn't He the God who showed you over the last 40 years of your life that He is? Even if you're a new Christian, I bet if you look at 40 years ago, you can see that even when you didn't know it, when you didn't ask God about it, He was there for you. Even if you're not a Christian, but if you think about it, the last 40 years of your life, there's unexplained things that have happened to keep you safe, to make a way when there wasn't a way, because God was always right there trying to get your attention, to show you He cares, to show you that He wants a relationship through His Son Jesus with you. Joshua and Caleb, they got to go in. And not only them, but their inheritance, their next generation to generation. God said, you know what? For all those naysayers, no. They don't get it. But you guys who went in with a holy mindset, with the obedience of what I told you, you get it. See, there's going to be many that have the same route that we have. Many with the same dreams and the same goals and the same visions that God gives us. But few will actually achieve it. And you know why? It's not because God doesn't want them to. It's because they're looking around and seeing the people who, left on the way to the journey. They're seeing how hard the work is. They're feeling their tired bones and their weary mind, and they're agreeing with all that is against the the victory, the success of the mission. And they're saying, you know what? I'm already too tired. Man, I ain't got it in me. I ask God to encourage you that when you're at the end of your journey and God says, hey, one more thing, and you're already tired and you're weary and you're all spent and you don't even know, like no one's around you, there's no one going with you. Everybody that said yes in the beginning, during the journey, they withered away or they fell apart and they tried to talk you out of it and they said, this is impossible. I pray that you have the courage, the fortitude to stand on what God told you and do it in faith. Take that one step, because God is already 10 steps ahead of you. He's not going to let his plan default. He's not going to let you be failed by his word. It's impossible for God to fail his own word. Remember who you're trusting. You're trusting the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who is the same yesterday, today, and will be tomorrow. So whether you're in the first step of your deliverance or your journey, whether you're in the 10th year, 30th year, or you are at the point where God said, all right, now we're ready. Let's go. Let's do this. I pray that you remember it's not by your power or might or even your strength. It's by the will of the Lord. And he will give you everything you need. Until next time, this is Melanie Keenan. And in his steps and for his glory, I'll see you next week on your Daily Dose.